Hello, I'm What's Your Face. Welcome back to the channel. I am doing a video today on the Mario movie, the Super Mario Brothers movie. I don't remember the name of it. I always forget. It's something like that, but I don't always remember what. So I guess that'll just be what we deal with that. I'm holding the mic this time because last time I had the mic right here, and it sounded super muddled. So I'm actually very curious to see if having the mic closer to my mouth would make it better or worse. I have no idea. So, the Super Mario Brothers movie came out, and I think before I even saw it, there was a lot of critics' reactions to the movie and audience reactions. So a lot of critics were saying that the movie was no bueno. They gave it a really bad score. I'm not gonna, you can look it up for yourself on Rotten Tomatoes. The critic score is pretty low. And then the movie came out, and then audiences and other people, just general people, were watching it, and they were like, "Wow, this movie's great. It's fantastic. It's the best movie ever made." So I've got a few ideas as to what might be going on here, but we're going to do this in a whole tier list. This time, I promise I'll try to make some more sense rather than before. I got a whole list written down with things to talk about, so keep me on track. Let's start off with the Super Mario Brothers movie review. The movie is mid. It's okay. It's not like a great movie. It's not a bad movie. It's decent at what it does, I guess. I guess in the very same way that Shazam was a very kind of middle of the road movie. It's good. It's not bad. It's not great. It's not going to hurt my sensibilities, but it goes right for the middle ground. And I think in a way, I don't know, I think I like this movie less than I like Shazam. So for that, my review of the movie is I will give this, I don't give a point system, so it's just going to be a 6. It'd be a low 7, high 6, but I'll just give it a 6 just to be more honest about how I feel. The Shazam movie is a 7. Shazam 2, Fear of the Gods, which honestly could be 6. You know what? We'll talk about this. Real quick. I want to get my thoughts across as far as the rating system goes, because a lot of people when they do rating system, it's 1 through 10, yada yada yada. I do that too, but for me, I feel like my issue is that once we get below a 5, it's what's the difference? So for me, 5 is a no good movie, not great. So basically anything below a 5 just fails on a technical level. Either the audio is bad, it was bad sound mixing, the music was terrible, the sound quality, the picture quality, the CGI, things like that. I think, that's fair, because I think most movies are hard to get made to begin with, so at least for most people. So I give them the benefit of the doubt. So 5 is kind of like my lowest. 6 is it's okay. It's not great. It's not bad. A 7 is all right, I mess with this a little bit. Nothing too hard, but I like it. An 8 is I really do like this. This is pretty fun. I like this a lot. And then a 9 is wow, this is great. This is perfect. And a perfect 10 is just that's it's cinema. So as far as I go, I give Mario, it's a 6. It's a high 6, low 7, and just to have not look like I give just 7s out, it's a 6. So let's talk about what is going on with the movie itself. Do I think it's as bad as critics are saying? No. As I think the last time I looked, it was 30% on Rotten Tomatoes for critic score, versus audiences is given an 80 or an almost 90, I think, which is incredibly high, by the way. But I think in order to understand what's going on, we need to understand the history of this series as far as Mario is concerned. If you know, the game came out forever ago, was on the Game Boy, Nintendo, SNES. Was it on those things? Whatever. It's an old Nintendo property, and it's about Mario, plumber, yada yada yada. They go and they do things. Generally, it's a platformer, so there's not, usually not too much of a story other than oh hey, you gotta save Princess Peach, so let's go save Princess Peach, and that's pretty much that's pretty much the story. Just save Princess Peach from Bowser, and that's about it. And in this film series, that there was a previous other movie with John Leguizamo and Bob Hoskins, I believe, who played Mario, and I never really bothered to watch it because I heard it's pretty bad, so I was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna bother watching this. Plus it's super old, so I never bothered. But I did think that movie, from what I've seen of videos and trailers of it, it just doesn't look good. It's not Mario. You know what I mean? It's not Super Mario. It's not any of those things. And I feel like that was kind of burned a lot of audiences and kind of set the precedent for how bad video game adaptations were going to be subsequently. Now let's move on to our next segment here, video game movie adaptations in general. Now, the Super Mario movie is pretty bad. it's pretty bad. The one with Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo. Um, you can take my word for it or not. I personally didn't watch the whole thing in one go. Like I said, I watched pieces of it, but even the pieces I saw, I was just like, Jesus. So don't take my word for it. I could be completely freaking wrong there. So don't take what I say as gospel. But it definitely set the precedent for terrible video game adaptations. And I'm remiss to think of any video game adaptations that I thought like were really fantastic. I remember when I was like way younger, like in high school, like even before high school, like junior high, like little like elementary school kid. For people outside of the U.S., that's about anywhere between 8 to 14. So in that gray area of life, I was a huge fan of the Resident Evil movies, but with Mia. I was gonna say Mia Wasikowska. That's not what it is at all. With Mila Jovovich and those movies are no good. I'm just gonna be honest. It was directed by Paul W.S. Anderson and written, I believe, a few of them at least. And they're not great movies. I'll give it that. Honestly, though, the scores are still pretty bang sometimes. Not all of them. The first one definitely has like that weird kind of like whatever. Let's get to the fact that beyond that, though, I can see now that those movies just I remember when I was a kid and I was like super excited because the Resident Evil 2 movie came out. Which was not based off of Resident Evil 2, the game. I mean, it was kind of a mix between 2 and 3, I guess. Claire Redfield and Leon were like nowhere to be seen. Whatever. Jill Valentine was at least there. They did have Carlos Oliveira. That was interesting. But I remember when I went to go see the movie, and my mom has this like friend that she loves, and she's kind of like always been like a second grandma to me. And she saw it on DVD. She rented the movie, and she was like, "This is the worst piece of shit I've ever seen." And man, you know what? She's not wrong. I remember my little kid heart was a little broken there, gonna be honest, but it makes sense. They're not good movies. They never were. And in terms of video game adaptations, there just really aren't a lot of really great ones. I mean, while I enjoyed Doom back in the day with Carl Urban and The Rock, and big surprise, the girl from Gone Girl, I forgot her name right now. I'm gonna get a lot of flack for that. I'm sorry. Rosamund Pike. I love Rosamund Pike. Whatever. It was a fun, dumb action movie, and I knew it. And that was that's what I went into it. And I had played the games before, but I wasn't like a huge diehard fanboy in back in the day. Is it a good movie adaptation? No, not really. But they tried. Sort of, not really. But I think that the problem with a lot of video game adaptations is twofold. One, you get the idea that video games are predicated on player choice, players doing things to advance the story. Therefore, you don't really need much of a story because the agency is in the hands of the player. You know what I mean? They don't have to be like, oh, we have to figure out why this character's doing this thing. Instead, in the video game, it's like, oh, it goes from point A to point B. It's basically an arcade shooter, and you see that quite a lot. How many fetch quests have people done in video games, and there's no real rhyme or reason for it? Maybe there's like some, like, oh my god, my daughter, she's gone, and we need to collect these 4 map pieces to find her, and that definitely is, unfortunately, kind of the run of the mill of video game adaptations. It's hard to separate that kind of way to write and show in video games and have that translate into movies. And video game adaptations are very hit or miss. And why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing this up because it's tough, man. It's tough to translate this thing for Hollywood for some reason, or just people in general. It's hard to adapt and make things different. And I think the second part of my 2-part rule was that players get agency, and then it just doesn't translate as well usually because people don't care about the source material. I mean, how many movies and TV shows have we seen nowadays where it's like these people really did not give a one hoot and a half about the series at all that they're adapting? You look at the Velma show, you look at all that kind of nest that's been going around, and you're just like, wow, these people really hate the properties they're working on. Maybe they shouldn't be the ones working on them. And that is kind of what happened to a lot of these movies. And so when you talk about Nintendo, you talk about all that stuff, Nintendo really doesn't really have a framework for most of their games as far as story goes. It's more of just like, here's a plumber. or just a man dressed in overalls. It's never really. I mean, I guess there's some lore that you can dig into. I'm sure Matt Pat's already done like 500 videos on it, which, great, good stuff. But the actual story, like, structure of the games is very nondescript. And so when, in terms of trying to translate that, you basically are wide open to do anything you want. And in a way, the original Super Mario Brothers movie tried to do that, and they really did not stick the landing there. They went way too out of there, way too out of left field for that. And I understand the reticence to try to do something new. So when it came to making this film, unfortunately, they kind of ended up relying on being as general as possible, not having a real backbone as a movie. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, it's very mid. I know people really like this movie. Some people are like swearing it's like one of their best Nintendo movies, and like, yeah, that's fair because there's not that many of them, and the other ones are pretty bad. But it's just so safe. It's by the numbers. It's not gonna piss anybody off, but it's not gonna make anyone scream to the rooftops unless they're like huge Nintendo nerds, and they will eat up whatever. And in that context, it's very similar to a lot of comic book movie properties, if you think about it, where in my mind, there's a lot of Marvel movies, right? And I love Marvel. I'm a huge Marvel fan as far as the comics and their games and other stuff goes, and I like their movies generally. But sometimes it feels like there's this like lowest common denominator that they can really stick to and not push past that, which is so different in terms of what's been going on in the comic books. Not in every aspect, of course, but definitely certain writers have been really pushing the mold. And I think Jonathan Hickman is one of my favorite comic book writers right now. And he's been making some really great arcs with the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, Secret Wars, with the remake, not the original Secret Wars, back in like what, the 80s or something, and also, or the 90s, I guess, and also what he's been doing with the X-Men very recently. I think he's not working on that anymore, but still, great, fantastic stuff, pushing the boundaries, and I feel like we're kind of missing that sometimes when we watch some Marvel movies, and it's not like they're bad necessarily, they're just kind of okay. And in terms of Nintendo, they're okay with okay, because honestly, at that point, audiences' expectations of the film are so low. And it makes me wonder if they casted knowing that. You cast actors that are going to get people to be reticent about, right? There's this huge thing in animation where it's like they have to cast like the biggest name actors for no reason, even though it's like audiences really don't care because it's an animation. They want to see good animation and good acting in general. And you don't have to be, A-list Brad Pitt to make that happen. You just need to be able to convey that. And I think sometimes it's better off not having a well-known actor play a character. Or, you could hire the guy who originally played Mario. But no, they deliberately went and casted some of the big Hollywood names today, aka Chris Pratt, Seth Rogen, Anya Taylor-Joy, Keegan-Michael Key, Jack Black, to name, I think, most of them. Oh, and Charlie Day, so that's 6, right? We can go through each one of them and kind of talk about it. Chris Pratt, I'm not a huge fan of Chris Pratt. Not that I dislike the guy personally. I don't know. There's always this artifice to his acting that I'm not a huge fan of, or maybe it's just him. I don't know. There's always those like actors or just people you just don't like for whatever reason, and that seems to be how I feel with Chris Pratt. And so I think that's how a lot of people feel with Chris Pratt sometimes. And when it came down to it, when they announced he was going to be Mario, everyone was really up in arms, being like, what? And then they released a trailer and it didn't sound any better, right? And everyone's been talking about like how his performance actually wasn't that bad in the movie. And it makes me wonder if that was by design, right? You cast an actor that's going to get potentially butts in theaters, right? People who like Chris Pratt are going to go watch it because he's in it. People who like Nintendo are probably going to watch it anyways. But people who don't like Nintendo or don't really care for Chris Pratt might not have gone and seen this movie. So people who dislike Chris Pratt, now those are people that are probably going to watch the movie for sure now, because you went away and made that a whole big deal that he's going to be the big figurehead of the series. And I find that so fascinating because it feels like a forehead move. It's like, hey, here's an actor that people kind of do it and have a love-hate relationship. Let's throw him in this movie, and let's garner that by picking some of his worst takes for the trailer versus the movie, because in the movie he does a fine job. I mean, he's not bad. I'm not gonna hate on the guy when there's no need to. He does a serviceable job as Mario. Nothing fantastic, nothing extraordinary, but also nothing offensive either. So I gotta give him, you did the job. Way to come by and just do the exact job you were hired to do, and nothing more and nothing less. Charlie Day, on the other hand, for me was an inspired choice. I love Charlie Day. I love It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That show is fantastic. I love the whole cast, and having him play Luigi, which is one of my favorite characters in Nintendo, I was very happy with, and I think he did a fantastic job. I think the only problem with that is that he really didn't have a whole lot to do, which is not I'm not a huge fan of, but it is what it is. Anya Taylor-Joy, another kind of it makes sense why they picked her. She's a big name right now. She just was in Edgar Wright's Last Night in Soho, which was fantastic. She was in Emma, which is also fantastic, and she's going to be in the new Mad Max Furiosa prequel movie, I believe, which is great. Good for her. Fantastic. Good job. Yeah, it's not rocking the boat, but it's also not like really changing the game. And I think that unfortunately, I do like the actress. I think she's really fantastic. But what did she really bring to the character? I don't know. I can't rightly say that she changed the way we thought of Peach forever. Like, no, I mean, it's all right. And then you got Keegan-Michael Key. I totally forgot he was even Toad, to be quite honest with you. I didn't even remember he was in that movie. Which, props, good. You slipped into the role very nicely. Good on you. Negatives, I had no idea you were in the movie, so I looked it up. I was like, oh, yeah, that's Keegan-Michael Key. You're right. So, did it really matter that he was, more well-known? I don't think so, because I don't know if there's anything he inherently brought that was, like, game-changing. I mean, and then last week we got Jack Black, who I'm a huge Jack Black fan, and I think there's a lot of people, and they wanted him to sing, and so I guess it makes sense hiring a singer, and I think he did a good job. He did the serviceable job. He wasn't inherently bad or good or anything, but that is an interesting point, right? You get people wondering who are you going to cast for Bowser. People expect some like super gruff, Josh Brolin sounding guy, and that's not what you get at all. You get Jack Black, which a lot of people assume he's Jack Black. Jack Black is Jack Black. We know what he looks like. He knows what he looks like. He's a great charismatic guy. So that's not who people first think. But then, they subvert their expectations of like he's not supposed to be this big gruff guy. He's a big softy who is a bit of a bully, and it works in the film. And I like the song Peaches. It's fine. It's good. I like Tenacious D quite a lot, so I wasn't super surprised that I liked the song. And I guess that's the thing. It's like the cast is all right. It's very safe. And in terms of some things, it's even there to provoke interest in a way of like picking an actor that people do and don't like. Love-hate relationship, and that was probably by design. And you can't hate the hustle there. But if you parallel that with Puss in Boots movie, the cast was fantastic in that movie. I mean, I didn't even know half of them. Actually, it's not true. I knew most of them. Some of them I don't even recognize was the character. And in a good way, though. In Puss in Boots, you had Antonio Banderas, fantastic. He is just Puss in Boots. That is just who he is. And then you got, I think, Selma Hayek, right? Plays the, that's loud. Kitty Softpaws, I believe. And she's fantastic. I think it's Selma Hayek. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, it was Selma Hayek. All right, sweet. Then we got John Mulaney as Jack Horner. We got Florence Pugh as Goldilocks. We got a bunch of other actors that I don't really know too well before the movie, but honestly, I really loved it. I think Wagner Moura was great as Wolf. Where is the dog guy at? Paddle was fantastic, and I think that was great. I don't think we needed a huge name because it allowed the character to shine on his own and allowed the actor to really fill that performance with whatever he want without any preconceived notions of, hey, I'm A-list star, from 8 other movies, and that's fantastic. I think that's generally a good thing. That's what I love about it. And Puss in Boots animation was fantastic. Now, the animation for this film, Super Mario Brothers, was pretty good. I mean, it looked good. It's Illumination. They do, all the the Minion movies. What else have they done? I'm real struggling here. I don't remember off the top of my head, but Despicable Me, I guess they're all right. You know, I don't dislike them. They're fine. The animation was cool. I guess it was like an HD version of Mario, which, you know, hey Nintendo, how about we get an HD, you know, or 4K anything, you know? My God, playing Nintendo games at 720p is one of the reasons why I have not bothered to buy any of the Switches, because I'm just like, why are we using old technology? I swear to God, we're gonna be able to like soar across the universe and like read God's mind before Nintendo even decides to even approach 2K. Screen resolution 2K, yeah, or anything above, you know, like 12 frames per second. You know, it is what it is. But I don't know. I guess for me, it's just always been, Jesus Christ. Let's see. Can I? I'm gonna block it. I'm gonna block the mic here so that you don't hear the trash compactor guy. I guess this is trash day. Good thing I waited to record this. Great. I'm so happy. The animation's fine. It's good. The animation's good. It's fantastic. You know, it looks good. I don't know what to tell you. It's looks like a good movie. The score is, I think, the thing that most people are like really in love with, which is quite interesting because I feel like, when people talk about, we're gonna power through this here. The soundtrack. I feel like when people talk about the soundtrack, it's usually because the movie's not great, right? They're like, well, the soundtrack was fantastic. It was great. Now, don't get me wrong. I love movie soundtracks, but no one ever talks about the movie soundtrack, man. Like, I mean, I guess there's the whole nostalgia bait that it is usually, where it's like, oh, here's a song that you know, and like, you know, I don't want to, you know, spoil too much of it, but like, that's so loud. I hope you can't hear that. We're gonna power through this right now. This ain't nothing but a thing, you know what I'm saying? So, I feel like no one really talks about the soundtrack unless the movie's like really, really, really bad. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can get really great soundtracks. You got John Williams' score for Superman. You got Danny Elfman's Batman score, Danny Elfman's Spider-Man score, and then that's where it probably ends for most people. But no, like, I think there's some good stuff there, and I think the soundtrack was serviceable. It used a lot of old Nintendo, you know, melodies and stuff like that, and reincorporated them in a fun way, and I think that's great. And that's fantastic. It's good. That seems to be what everyone talks about, which is like, a soundtrack should be good, but it should not be the best part of a movie, because there's a movie there, and the soundtrack is supposed to supplement the movie, not to be the main entree. Now, don't get me wrong, music is great. I love music. Like I said, I listen to movie soundtracks, game soundtracks all the time. I love them because they're fantastic, and it feels kind of funny that that's like what everyone seems to be focusing on. It's like the soundtrack, man. It's great, right? Like, what did you think about the movie? Oh, the soundtrack, my dude. Like, they got the rainbow theme, they got the Elder theme, they got the Luigi's Mansion theme. It's like, okay. Okay. It's nice that they use music that was already available in other forms into the movie. That is correct. But what did you think about it? They're like, and then you're like, okay, how about the music though? You're like, oh, the music's fantastic. No, I mean like the songs they use in it, like the Beastie Boys songs, and people just like stop talking to you at that point because they're like, yeah, they use the Beastie Boys as No Sleep Till Brooklyn. You know, that is a song they used, and then they used you know, like just all kinds of songs in the movie that just felt completely unnecessary. Honestly, I feel like the Mario movie would have been way better without any of the actual, you know, singing, you know, like songs that don't exist outside of Nintendo. You know, songs that exist outside of Nintendo. Songs that exist outside of Nintendo, and I feel like that would have made the movie much better. It is a weird choice. It feels very much like, here's that song you like, and that is pretty much what the movie is. It's like, you know that thing you like? Well, here it is. You know, it's clearly bait for people who like Nintendo to be like, you know that one thing you love? Well, here it is. I think the Nerdwriter did a video that was really fantastic back in the day. Oh, here you go. Intertextuality, Hollywood's new currency, 6 years ago. Wow, that's old. And that ends up being the case. That ends up being very true. I mean, you look at it, intertextuality is all about, here's that thing you like, and now you like the new thing, right? Even though it's not new, it's literally just a bunch of old stuff. That's what happened in The Rise of Skywalker. That's what happened in The Last Jedi. That's what happened with The Force Awakens. This happens with a lot of these movies, man. No offense to Disney or Marvel or any of these people, but they're always like, you know, it's like everything's become like this Family Guy sketch. It's like, remember that one time where that thing you loved, and it's like, okay, cool, I did love that thing now. Why are you showing it to me again? It just makes something new, and it's this fear of making something new because you're not sure if it'll play well with audiences. And I think this movie is it's the biggest. If everyone talks about the symptoms of all these things of like what's bad about the movie, it's mid, it's not great, and then all the things was like, like, oh, all the good things about the movie. I think all in all, the symptom and of the disease and the reason why people like it is because it's the same reason. It's intertextuality. It's this idea that here's that thing you liked from somewhere else, and people don't like it. Or I guess another phrase for it is member berries. You remember when that one. You remember. No, you remember. And member berries is not what a movie makes, and that's why for me I had to give this film a bit of a lower score than Shazam: Fear the Gods. Well, Shazam: Fear the Gods, I think quality-wise is similar, and it uses a lot of tropes. I think it does try to introduce new concepts, at least. I'm nothing super major or anything, but like the idea of the like new villains in the movie that people didn't like, it still is interesting. It's still something I haven't seen before in terms of like the Shazam world or comic books. Like these are the relators of Daughters of Titan. That's interesting. The tree thing, like, okay, I've seen that before, but it's not super egregious. It tries in little places. Whether it succeeds in the trying, I don't know, but it tries nonetheless. Jesus Christ. Now we get to the critics versus audiences, the score. Like why is there such a disparity? I think it's kind of similar to what was going on with Shazam. It's like, I don't know. I guess people just didn't have warm, fond feelings of the first Shazam movie or any Shazam anything. I mean, I think people did like the original Shazam movie, but like now it's like, like, oh, we've already had so many comic book movies. We want something new. And then here comes Nintendo with a Super Mario Brothers movie, and it's the same movie almost. And everyone's like, this is the greatest thing ever made. And it's like, it's not. It's the same movie. it's almost the same premise if you think about it. But like, I guess it's like the fact that it tries to be so not offensive that it makes it a little offensive. But what are you going to do? What comes next? I don't know. I mean, they said they wanted to make like 1 billion more of these movies, which is like interesting. I'm not like super upset or mad about that, I guess. It's like, okay, yeah, go ahead. I want to see Luigi. Yeah, go ahead. I guess I want to see a Luigi's Mansion movie at some point with Charlie Day. I think that'd be kind of fun, but can you at least make it interesting? Get Guillermo del Toro to direct that, and maybe I'll be more interested. I think that's the problem. It's so safe, and it's every other movie from here is going to be safe, and everyone likes to pretend it's so different. It's not a superhero movie, therefore it's different. It's different. It's Nintendo. Remember berries? And it's like, it's the same thing. It's like the movie series has just started, and it's already being so boring and so safe. Like, these are things that people hate Marvel for. These are things that people hate DC for. These are people hate certain movie series because they're like, oh, it's too safe. Same thing with Star Wars. I wasn't a huge fan of any of the new ones. Like, I like, look, props out to the cast. Love Adam Driver, love Daisy Ridley, love John Boyega, love all those actors individually, and probably cohesively too. I mean, I think they would have worked a lot better than they did in the movies. But like, the movies were not good; they were no good, and it's because they didn't add anything new. And it's like, what do you expect? How are you gonna like do something interesting in the next one? And then obviously they came into The Last Jedi, which was like a real overcorrection to the first one. Which people say. I don't think it's an overcorrection. I think it's the same movie. It's just, they did things with characters you don't like, which is not, in my mind, that completely different. So, I don't know, man. I feel like the rest of this series is going to get very old very quickly. But people are going to eat it up because it's Nintendo, it's Mario, it's Luigi, so the characters you grew up with. And I think that's going to give them enough of a runway to make these movies for quite a bit, and that's fine. I'm not saying don't make these movies. I'm just saying, can you make them better, please? Same thing with Shazam. I mean, look, I'm not mad about Shazam Fury of the Gods. I would see a third one, but do something interesting with it. They kept teasing, Dr. Sivana and the worm guy, and they didn't, Caliber, whatever the dude's name is. They didn't really do much with that, so I was like, okay, cool, I guess. Would have loved to have seen that now, but, it's fine. I mean, it happens. And in my mind, I don't know. I just feel like, movies should strive for something greater. Whether it's, a horror movie that, I mean, people have been talking about the Pope's Exorcist and all those other horror movies that have been coming out recently, and they're all generally run of the mill. And it's like, okay, like, why would we bother watching a movie if it's so run of the mill, you guys? This is not great. This is not what a movie makes. I don't know. These are my thoughts. Whether you agree with them, disagree with them, let me know in the comments down below. Like, comment, subscribe, blah, 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 blah.